So good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me your time and attention again. I really appreciate it. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ORCiD. It's something that's become a very hot topic within Nemours. I know we have a lot of friends on here that aren't necessarily directly from Nemours, but this is really useful to you, especially as you're starting your career as an investigator and really going out and publishing and going to conferences. So if you've been to the research talks, you might have heard some of this before. So what ORCiD is it's a way for you to show off everything you've done. And we talk about it from a few different standpoints, from a few different viewpoints. So from the enterprise level, and this is not just Nemours, this is Delaware or everywhere from Stanford to CHOP to Hopkins to Syracuse. What this is it's becoming the standard for clinicians and scientists and researchers worldwide. So I don't know how many of you have come across this. I use our chief medical officer and head of research for Nemours as a great example because her name is Dr. Mary Lee. And when we look for her in Scopus, it takes a little while to figure out which Mary Lee we're talking about. You can add in affiliations and do all of these things. But when you're looking at somebody's profile through someplace like Scopus or PubMed, you don't really know if this is exactly the person you're looking at, especially as she's changed different places she's working. She came to us from UMass and Harvard. So you really kind of have to sort through to find her things. Once we created a Scopus or an ORCiD profile for her, leveraging her Scopus profile, it's much easier to determine what she has done, what she has written, what grants she's been awarded. It supersedes your name, your title, and any organizational changes. Your account also becomes a dynamic CV. You own your account. We're asking you to do it from Nemours. Other organizations may ask you to do it for them and use their affiliation name, but it really is owned by you. All of the information comes for you and it stays with you no matter what organization you're at. The other reason organizations really like ORCiD is there's something called an API, which takes all of this information and puts it in a digital format that can then be loaded into other services. So it pulls information from places like Scopus, SiteRef, Dimensions Wizard if you've done some grants, and it can send them to other resources. So some of the other places it can be sent to, Nemours is investing into something called Elsevier Pure. It can be fed into that. It can be fed into something called Find a Researcher. It can be fed into Flight Tracker and other different faculty management systems. So there's a lot of utility in both directions for both the individual and the enterprise. You own your entire body of work. Everything from your undergrad through graduate school, postdoc, medical school, everything that you've published is totally controlled by you. What you want to show, what you don't want to show. There's things that you can make public. There's things that you can keep private. One of the ways that that's super helpful is when you are applying to grants from the NIH, you actually can use this system to create an individualized CV. I am not the expert at that. We have another librarian named Richard James, who I think has spoken with you guys in the past. He's the one that can reach out to you and talk to you about that a little bit further. This is the flow of information. I always feel like people don't have a really strong understanding of how information is moved through systems. So PubMed is the basis for just about everything. Vendors, publishers send things directly to PubMed. They index millions of things at this point. They feed Medline, they feed Scopus. If you use something called CINAHL or any of, Web of Science, any of the things from ProQuest, PubMed from the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health really is the foundation for a lot of those things. From PubMed, it's fed to places like Scopus. Scopus can then actually be directly fed into your ORCiD ID. And then we're showing the leveraging by your institution, your affiliation. So we've talked about a little bit about the academic affiliation. We've talked what works for the enterprise, what works for the individual. But more importantly, this is really the takeaway I want you guys to have from this. It's the creating of that dynamic CV that is linked to you. Access can be shared via URL. We see people that post them to their LinkedIn accounts, their Twitter feeds. You can download a QR code to drop on a poster. So if you are at a conference and somebody sees your poster and you want them to have more information about who you are as an individual, especially as you're starting out your career or you're mid-level, everything is right there for them. They don't have to go hunting for you. It's increasingly required for journal submissions. We get panicked emails that a publisher, we're seeing it a lot more from Elsevier and Springer and some of the smaller journal companies are requiring that not just the submitting author has an ORCiD ID, but that every author involved has an ORCiD ID. The bad thing that's happening from that is that people are just kind of creating an account really fast and not putting any information in it. So there's people who have multiple ORCiD accounts who've never kind of filled everything out. So we're going to go over that in a minute. For Nemours, we are requiring it if you are applying to our open access initiative. We have $20,000 to spend this year to help people support their funding in purely open access journals. We can give you up to $2,000 towards your submission, and we require that you have an ORCiD ID. It saves you a lot of admin time, and that's kind of been the underlying theme for all of this, because we can leverage that Scopus account, SiteRef, Europe PubMed Central, Dimensions Wizard, all of these different places. What it does is it allows those things to be passively added. You will have to manually enter a few things. So if you publish books, if you're in chapter, if you have book chapters, if you do a poster presentation or a lecture, all of those things get added manually, but all of your articles, and I say all, it's usually 90 to 95% of articles will passively be added as long as you sign up through, add your things through Crossref and Europe PubMed Central, and we'll go over that in a minute. And again, it travels with you throughout your career. If you have a name change, we see that happen commonly, that people will use multiple different names throughout their career. Sometimes they'll add their middle name. Sometimes people will change their names throughout their career. So you can actually easily update that and manage it. So all of those will show up underneath you. If you work for Nemours, we please encourage you to reach out to any of the medical library staff. On average, when we sit with somebody, and we will sit there and share screens, and you can fill out your ORCiD profile, and we'll just kind of be the little Jiminy Cricket over your shoulder going, yes, you can click that button, it's okay. Takes 20 to 30 minutes, especially if you have your CV handy. We do have people who want to just kind of type everything in separately, which is great, but we'll make sure you get all of your information in there that we're asking, so that can then be utilized in the things I mentioned earlier, Flight Tracker, Elsevier Pure, and the Find a Researcher. You can check the medical library portal. Again, if you're at Nemours, it's at the nemoursfoundation.ovidds.com, or it's linked through the home screen for nemours.org through SharePoint. It's up on the right-hand corner. We have directions written out on how to get through different things in ORCiD. We also have a Nemours Medical Libraries Teams page, and there's an ORCiD channel built within there. So we have a couple of different resources, or again, we're always happy to sit with you while you go through it. And I'm going to switch and share my Chrome page, because I want you to see kind of what ORCiD looks like. Does anybody have any questions while I switch? Trying to switch? There we go. Okay, can you see my ORCiD screen now?
We can see it.
Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when you just go to orcid.org. It gives you some information on why you want to do it, how you do it. And I'm going to show you the registration page really fast, just to show you how easy it is. I always use kind of a fake name, so some of you who work for Nemours might recognize the name that I use. Just because I want you to see kind of the first couple steps, because these are where people get stuck. So here you can add an additional email. We recommend that you add a Gmail or AOL or whatever you're using that doesn't belong to your affiliation, because sometimes you change affiliations really fast and you don't remember what your login was, and then you kind of lose it. There's a bunch of steps you can go through to get it again. But adding that backup email will make it so that it's always accessible to you no matter where you are. So I'm just going to click next so you can see it. So the first thing it does is it asks you, hey, do you already have an account? Are you one of these people? So it gives me a bunch of different options. You can see it's pulling off of the name DuPont. Obviously, none of those are me because I'm making this up. The next thing it's going to do, obviously, is going to ask you for a password. I'm just going to make up a password really fast. Up to you if you want to get emails from them. Whoops. Made up a bad fake password. Hold on. Okay. So this is the part that we in Nemours need to make sure that you're clicking, and probably if you are working with an organization that is using ORCiD to drop things into a faculty management system like Flight Tracker, you're going to need to do the same thing. So we ask that you click everyone. And what that does is it allows all of your information to be passed through that API that I talked about earlier. Otherwise, if you lock it down, we can't use your information that you took the time to enter into other resources. Then you're going to consent to terms of use, privacy policy, data being processed. So that's basically how you're being organized within their data streams. And then you're not a robot. And then you're going to register. I'm not going to register because I don't want to create a fake account. But I do want you to see what it looks like when you have an account. So mine's not super exciting because I haven't done a lot, but just so you have an idea of what it looks like. You enter your name. I always use my middle initial, but I also know that other authors don't necessarily enter my other initial, so I have it as Kristina Flathers, just plain as well. You can enter a biography. I know for the Find a Researcher folks at Nemours, they're asking that you enter a biography, and there's some rules around that. I think it's 300 words. You can enter your employment history. This is another place that people have gotten a little stuck. You can force it to be Nemours Children's Health, but when you start typing in Nemours, it's going to flip to things like Nemours Children's Clinic. We can fix that on the back end. We just haven't figured out how to do that yet. We need to have permissions to have the API. So if you need to use Nemours Children's Clinic, for Wilmington, I think there's another version that shows up for Florida. I think it might be Nemours Foundation. That's fine. We'll still be able to find you. We just really need that Nemours Children's. I think Nemours Children's Health System might be another option as well. I was able to back it out myself and kind of force it to do Nemours Children's Health, but I know I had to kind of futz with it a little bit. You see it went back to Nemours Children's Clinic, and I can go back and change that with the edit button. If you're at Nemours, we're asking you you don't necessarily have to enter your undergrad. You are welcome to if you'd like to. I know that Dr. Lee was asking to have anything master's level and above added in terms of education. So where you may have gotten a master's degree, where you may have done a fellow or a postdoc, if you have an MD, if you've done a fellowship, they kind of want to see all of those things. When you start to enter the places that you were educated, will see they'll have organization identifiers. So typing in Drexel brings me to Drexel University, and then it kind of filters you in underneath there. Any invited positions and distinctions, these things you can add as you want to. I will tell you, I've spoken with a few department chairs, and they do not want to take the time to enter all of these things. So the advice that we're giving is enter the things that are important to you. Enter things that are important that you've won, or membership and services that you're really proud of that you want people to know of. It doesn't have to be any more exhaustive than you want it to be. But think about filling it out fully moving forward. If you kind of take a look at this quarterly, if you have to do a performance management system and you have to do things quarterly anyway, it's a nice thing to just kind of go, oh, I did write that chapter. Oh, I did speak at that conference. And this is the place that you can enter these. Again, with funding, you have a few options with this. You can actually, oh, why did it clear out at me? You actually can search and link. So I don't have any NIH grants, but if you do, you can click this dimensions wizard. And I know we found some for Dr. Lee, so I'm just going to use her as an example. So we could add one or all of these grants. And this is where you would have to go through. You can see there's multiple Dr. Lees in here. If you do not have it, if you do not have any grants to add manually, or if you do not have any grants that show up through Dimensions Wizard, you can add them manually. So you would just follow the steps. And with these, again, it's as exhaustive as you make it. If you have all of this information, of course, you're going to have the funding type and the title. You might not necessarily have a project link. You might not necessarily know exactly, if it started in June or if it started in July and you're not really sure. You can put the year. You can put 2019 and that it ended in 2021. That's okay. But there are certain things that are required. As you can see, it wants the funding agency name, the city, and any identifier. So if you do have any further articles or things like that, you can enter them through there. The works work similarly. You can add by searching and linking. So you can link through any of these. We are recommending Crossref. We are recommending Scopus. And I went past it. We are recommending Europe PubMed Central. Europe PubMed Central is actually a mirror to the United States PubMed Central. So if it's something that's the thing that's the most likely to slip past Scopus. So definitely add that one. Scopus has a little bit tighter rein than PubMed. They don't index as many things as PubMed in most respects, but they actually pick up some engineering and bench science things that PubMed doesn't. So they actually counteract each other really well. They act as a nice counterbalance. These are really easy to do. You can go in either direction. You can start from here and have it search for you. You can see I'm already linked, so it knows where to find me. I actually recommend that you go into Scopus in a separate tab, search for yourself so you can make sure it's you, eyeball your publications, make sure those are all you, and then go and do this from the other direction. And this is one of the places that people kind of ask us for help. Once you have each of those set up, if you're still missing things, again, book chapters, lectures, you can go in and add those manually. And the list of things that are available manually is kind of wild. So there's the books and the book chapters, any journal articles that aren't in here. And then we get down into the conferences and the conference papers. There's intellectual property such as patents or registered copyright. And you can even add things like artistic performances or data sets. So there's a lot of options in here. Again, as exhaustive as you want it to be, and really think about maybe not delving super far into the past, but kind of deciding that you're going to add things continually moving forward. So that's a quick intro to ORCiD. Once you set up the things in Scopus and Crossref and Europe PubMed Central, they will automatically passively fill for you. You can see in mine, again, I don't have a lot of things, but you can see in mine that it does have Kristina and Flathers via Scopus-Elsevier or Crossref as a preferred source. So it does just kind of fill things in for you as you do them, as long as it's indexed somewhere. So I'm going to stop talking, and please let me know if you have any questions or concerns.